There we go. Okay, recording.
All right. Mick, you want to start us up?
Sure. Hello. Hold on. There we go. Quiet now. Great. Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of an unexpected podcast. This time, hi, I'm Mick. I'm here currently in Poland, and I'm joined by Matt and Evan and Alisher. Matt and Alisher are in the States, and Evan is currently, I believe, in Ireland or
Also in the
somewhere else.
States.
Oh,
No,
he's in
yeah.
the States
Also
too.
in the
He,
States. I'm
he,
I'm
Also in
one
the
I'm one
States.
room over from
yeah, he's 10 feet away from
Dad.
me.
Nice.
I actually I've figured out almost light speed travel. So in the time that I sat down here and Dad sat in the other room, I've actually traveled all the way to Ireland to film this, just to increase the breadth of our inclusivity.
Sounds legit. So, today we are gonna continue doing the things we did, well, you guys did on the previous episode, which was reviewing the good armies in from the Lord of the Rings. I unfortunately couldn't make it over the last episode, which I'm super annoyed about because I missed out on reviewing my favorite list from the entire game, which was Road to Helm's Deep. But oh well. So we're gonna be moving on to the next one. So you guys finished on Riders of Theoden last time, correct?
Right. I think we have Army of Eterus next.
Army of Eterus next. Yes, here we go. Cool. So who would like to go first?
Let's do Alisher. Have Alisher go first because he's on his phone.
Yeah, he's
How
like the
Oh my
most.
gosh, Gen
He's like
Z.
completely
I
not
am trying
interested. No,
to
no,
Disgusting.
he's
point.
actually.
I'm trying to do due diligence here. Very much. I need to know how these
No,
things
no, no. I
work.
think, I think, I think what Alisher is doing is that he's on his TikTok, and this podcast is actually his second screen, and so
True,
and so in order
true.
to in order to try to grab the viewers' attention and get them off TikTok, let's have Alisher start us off.
I've actually got four monitors set up. One of the monitors is this, and three of the other ones are short form video content that I'm just watching constantly
Yeah.
to keep myself entertained.
Actually,
Yeah.
when we're prattling on about this silly game, Alisher is actually in his spare time is on Tinder, swiping one way or the other.
Yeah, goes to show what I
I
think.
mean, there's no way anyone's matching with him because he plays SBG. But anyways,
Well,
Yeah, and
unless he,
also his skills are unmatched. So there you go.
unless he's got a match with Rainier, he's got a profile that's like, I'm Alisher, I'm an evil man.
Look, guys, I was just trying to calculate points, and now I'm taking a lot of strays. All right, let me read this. Let me read this.
I
These
have I
weren't
have I have
strays;
four
these were aimed.
Yeah,
I
they
have
were
four
very
cats
good.
here.
You're right. You went for the head. All right. Army of Eris. You have Helm Hammerhand, King of Rohan. You can take a horse. You have Haleth. He's a hero of legend. You can take Haleth, who's a hero of valor. You can also take a horse. You can take Hama, also a hero of valor. You can take a horse. Veralaf. He can take a horse and a bow. You can take for heroes of fortitude, Hera with her named horse, Ashir, Olwyn with a horse, Captive Rohan with an array of upgrades that they can take. Minor heroes, you can take Leaf. Warriors, you can take Rohan with an assortment of different things that they can take: banner, bow, spear, shield, or a shield and throwing axe rather. A rider of Rohan, banner, throwing spear, and then Royal Guard who can take be on foot or take a horse and throwing spear. For their special rules, they bows don't count towards the army's limit. The rider of Rohan bows don't count to the limit. Once per game at the start of any fight phase, your general can use a special rule if they charge in the preceding move phase. If they do, then until the end of the turn, friendly Rohan models within 12 inches of your general must reroll all failed to wound rolls when making strikes. Protect the king. When a friendly Rohan hero charges until the end of the turn, friendly Rohan warrior models within 6 inches of them will automatically pass courage tests they are required to take for charging an enemy with the terror special rule. What do we think of the list?
Huh.
Hmm.
It seems bad.
it's it's a weird thing because some of its heroes are quite good.
Yes.
Helm for his points is very, very good. Free hero combat, strength 5, +1 to wound, fight 6. um, Horse Lord with, I think Helm has 3 fate, doesn't he? 2 or 3, something like that. I might just be
Helm has 3
wrong.
fate in this list.
Yeah, 3 fate. Um, which means that it's very, very hard to take him off his horse, which is very good in this edition because horses are expensive. Um, and then Haleth is also really good. He's pretty cheap, 3 attacks, fight 6. Um, Hum is terrible. Well, I wouldn't
Explain
call him
why.
terrible, but he's certainly not great. Um, he's 2 might, 2 attacks, fight. It's fight 5, um, which isn't great for 70 points. And the main thing is that he doesn't really get anything else because his warrior poet special rule, which I believe we discussed before in one of our early episodes, which is basically you spend one of his 3 will points and you get a 6-inch reroll to wound rolls of natural 1, which is a very, very minor benefit. Um, However, uh, Hera's pretty good. Olwen's pretty good. Hera's got 3 might and is also 70 points, and Olwen has 3 attacks. Um, so
And
I mean,
she also has a special rule where if she charges 2 people, she becomes very hard to kill, which is useful.
yes. Not like what's that Dunland guy's special rule where he gets a free heroic defense, but still pretty good.
Yep.
Because I think it's non-natural 6s, so if you have +1 to wound or might, you can might
Yep.
up the rolls still.
Yep.
Um,
But she
and
doesn't
then
have to call
Leaf
anything either, so she can call other stuff while this is
yeah.
going on, which is nice.
Has anyone here had the chance to test Leaf? Because
Oh,
I
I
honestly
have.
have no idea.
Yeah, I've played him twice, and he's fun. Um, I don't. He's if you have the 50 points, there's some really interesting stuff you can do with him, but he's certainly not a must take at 50 points. But he's neither a must take nor is he somebody who, if you spend the 50 points on him, you're necessarily going to regret spending it. Because so Leash Stick is he comes with 5 will points, and if you spend a will point at the end of his activation, as long as he isn't engaged in combat, so he wants to hover somewhere kind of like back in the ranks, which makes sense considering he's like a 12-year-old kid. Um, he can do one of 5 things. He can allow Rohan hero models within 3 inches of him to declare a heroic combat for free. Um, so by the way, you don't have to do this after those folks have charged. So you can move Leaf to near a bunch of heroes, call this thing, and then have the heroes move and charge somewhere else and get this bonus. Um, and he can. The second one is he can make friendly models within 3 inches of him get fearless. You can have him give models within 3 inches of him. They ignore the -1 to hit when moving and shooting. You can reroll failed to hit wounds, which is an interesting way to get a pretty decent volley of throwing spears off with him. And there's another one that allows or gives everybody within 3 inches woodland creature and mountain dweller, so you can avoid most terrain. And then another one where friendly Rohan models within 3 inches of him increase their movement value by 2. And that is not a march. So you can have, your cavalry suddenly charge 12 inches and your infantry suddenly charges 8 inches, which causes people to freak out sometimes. But the downside of all this is that he can do each one of these things once. So he has 5 tricks, each one he can spend once. And you really never have a game where like all of these tricks matter, but usually like 2 or 3 of these tricks will matter during the course of the game. And if you can set it up right, you get some really interesting things, like all of a sudden your cavalry is charging right through those woods and into your opponent's flank, or all of a sudden your infantry that the other guy carefully positioned just outside of 6 inches of his cavalry is charging his cavalry. Or all of a sudden you get this like massive volley of throwing spears into somebody that's re-rolling to hits on a 4-up and is pretty useful. And that stuff has a really interesting effect in the game. It's at the point where you really have to kind of think hard about whether you take Leaf or a captain in this list, because both of them kind of give decent benefits.
I feel like
I'm a
you
big fan of
probably want
him.
to take Leaf. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah.
I think you probably do want to take Leaf. The only thing is if like you're giving up something else in order to take him, like you can't take Olwen or you can't take the captain, so you don't have a march in the list or something like that, then maybe you want to, think long and hard about it. Because there are you're paying 50 points for a hero that's basically not going to kill anybody is the downside of him. But sometimes that's okay.
Sure. It's just my thinking currently is why am I even taking this list if I could be taking one of the other Rohan lists? And so my instinct is, well, Leaf gives me something that the other Rohan lists just don't have,
Well,
and that's the really.
Leaf does show up in the other War of the Rohirrim Rohan lists.
Yes, yeah, of course. But I mean, in general, other than the War of the Rohirrim ones, between all of the other Rohan lists, you don't have that. And like someone like Helm Hammerhand, well, you somewhat have that with Aragorn. All of the other heroes, you have it with the other Rohan heroes, warriors, etc. are the same. So it almost feels to me like Leaf could be the reason why I would go for this type of list, or perhaps the other War of the Rohirrim list, because if I wasn't taking Leaf, I would almost always be tempted to take one of the Rohan, one of the standard Rohan lists.
Yeah.
It's a weird list, isn't it? Because it's got some of the framework for an all cavalry Rohan list. It has all
It
the
does, yeah.
options. It's got the they don't count towards the bow limit thing. It also doesn't feel like it should be one because it doesn't get the +1 strength on the charge, which is big. It doesn't get anything else really as a benefit. And a lot of its cool heroes, or not a lot, but some of its cool heroes you don't really want to mount. Like, I don't know about you, but mounting my 50-point Leaf for 20 points for his horse does not seem like an overly great investment. Um,
Yeah, I don't think I've ever put him on a horse.
Yeah,
yeah.
also
Um,
the second special rule, it only works for 6 inches. So if you were playing this as all cav, then
And you
that
couldn't
rule
get it
that rule is a bit
sometimes.
useless at times. Yeah.
which one? Oh, the Fearless?
The Protect the King, it only works within 6. So
Oh,
if you're
okay.
setting up a charge from further away, then your cavalry
Yeah.
doesn't actually reach.
hmm Yeah, and the weird thing though is if you're making an infantry army, in order to make that infantry army sort of stand up to any beating whatsoever, you're gonna want a decent number of foot Royal Guard because they've got the fight 4 and they've got the defense 6. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, Foot Royal Guard just underwent a hefty nerf, being changed from 10 points to 11 points and not having any changes. So you're really going to be stretched for points then. Um, so it does kind of feel like an awkward list
Yeah.
to make.
The big problem with the War of the Rohirrim lists is they don't have the ability to kind of access Fight 4 that the other Rohan lists have. I mean, they can get the kind of expensive Royal Guard, but they don't have that, +1 fight value on the charge with the cav.
No, they do.
Oh, yeah, no, that's right. They do, don't they? All right, never mind. I take that back. It's the foot. Because I guess the reason I wasn't thinking about that is I usually play these guys as heavy foot, but the heavy foot lists tend to get kind of outclassed by now, like everybody else that's now fight 4, um, uh, which is a problem. I think the times that I've taken these have like run into like Uruk-hai who are out fighting me, and uh, Gondor that now are out fighting me, which can be a problem.
Yeah, fight four, I think, in this edition is now the magic number you want to hit. And if you don't hit fight four, you're gonna have some struggles unless you have specific lists. Because there's so many armies that are fight four. Um, so I think taking a foot version of this army without a lot of foot royal guard is a mistake. The issue is a lot of foot royal guard are very expensive point wise. So you sort of have to find that balance. Um, and also the army isn't super great as Cav, as we talked about, because they don't get the plus one strength and they don't get any other bonuses. Um, so I do think this is in kind of an awkward place. I think all in all, just to sort of wrap this up, it feels like it's towards the higher half of playable, because it's still Rohan, right? It's still gonna have really good matchups. It's still gonna be able to shoot people to death if you're taking all Cav. And the heroes are really, really solid. It's just got some annoyances that I think stop it from getting near the competitive range.
So, I mean, for me, I'd put it a little lower. I think I'd put it kind of at mid-tier playable. And the reason I'm doing that is because the inverse of the it's still Rohan is that it's still Rohan, so that all the armies that get plus one to wound against it, and there are a lot of them, um, are still there and are still a problem. And like this army gets absolutely mulched by the hill tribes lists. And then
Yeah.
you've got a whole bunch of armies out there that aren't necessarily plus one to wound against Rohan, but they're plus one to wound against men.
It makes you wonder how they beat them in the movies when the
Yeah,
hill tribes were so angry that they all got plus one to wound against all of them. It's almost like hatred
It's
is
the
its
magic
own
of the
special rule that
movies, you
makes no
know?
sense. But anyways,
I mean that's why the hill tribes ended up at the end of War of the Rohirrim putting Helm and Hera's heads up on pikes and completely extinguishing the Rohan bloodline and taking over
now
the country.
now I wasn't really fully paying attention when I was watching that movie, but I think you and I may remember it slightly differently.
Yeah, you have to
I'm
watch
pretty
the
sure there were big eagles in there.
yeah you
And
have
I
to
think
watch
it's only
the
about eagles.
yeah
No, I don't remember any Eagles.
I think you have to watch the cutscenes. You got to stay through the credits to the cutscenes, and
Right.
that's where it all happens.
Oh, that was my problem. I left the
Yeah,
theater too early.
yeah. Boy, was that not pretty once the hill tribe suddenly got their plus one to wound.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. So mid range playable for me. Mick, where do you
I
put
give
it?
it I give it like 5 out of 10.
Yeah,
I probably wouldn't bother, basically. Like if I was playing Rohan, I wouldn't play this Rohan.
Oh,
And I play a lot of
should
Rohan.
we go over the system again that we're scoring things on? I feel like some people might be confused.
yeah. We should
Sure.
do that. We should probably do that every episode. Go ahead.
Yeah, so dominant is the top tier. The hope is that we put no armies in there. We have put a couple of armies in there. Basically, dominant is like these are the best armies out there, and they collapse the meta in a way where it is centralized around beating them. Um, and then competitive is like this is a strong list. This is something we think could win a pretty big tournament. It's got the tools to be able to deal with some of the dominant armies, um,
And all of the
not all
playable
of them.
armies.
Um, and yes, and the vast majority of the playable armies, though you might pop up
Right.
against a bad matchup every once in a while. And then playable is basically the bog standard. It's like this is an army. You will push these models across the table. They will win some games. They will lose some games. You might win a smaller tournament. You're probably not gonna go to the big leagues with this. And then what was our bottom tier? Was it unplayable?
Unplayable, yes.
Unplayable. It's either severely outclassed, or just like can't function properly as an army. Um, you're not gonna have fun playing against this. Your opponent's gonna walk over, playing as this rather. Your opponent's gonna walk over it. Um, the army needs to get buffed in some way because it's just not in a functioning state.
Yeah, nobody's having any fun playing this list. And to be clear, if we're assigning a list to the playable category, that is not intended to be a implied critique of the army or its design or the people who at GW who thought through the army. In at least my opinion, and I think this was the opinion of the group the last time we were discussing this, all armies should be in the playable bucket. Because those, if everybody was in the playable bucket, then everybody would have kind of an even shot at beating everybody else. If setting aside issues of player ability, some armies would be better against other armies, but just because of the rock paper scissors matchup, but on a fairly even-handed basis, there's going to be roughly as many armies that they're going to be better than that they're going to be worse than. So playable is actually where we want these armies to be. So
Cool. Playable. Just about.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. We ready to do defender? Oh,
Alisher?
actually, Alisher. Sorry.
Yeah.
Alisher disappeared. Where's this army go?
I agree it's playable. I think I kind of feel like it's the same case with all the Rohan armies. The troops are not anything to really be excited about, but the heroes do like compensate for a lot. So I think of the Rohan armies, this one has a lot of diversity in terms of what heroes you can take. And they're all pretty nifty and interesting. So I would say it's playable as well. I would be hesitant to put it in a competitive category though.
Alrighty. Shall we talk about Defenders of the Hornberg?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You mind if I take this one? I've actually played this one a few times.
Go for it. I've never played it, and Minas Tirith is next, which I have played a ton of.
All right, fair enough. All right, so Defenders of the Hornberg. So for those of you who have seen the War of the Rohirrim movie, this is the one that like fought in the snow outside the Hornberg, as opposed to the previous list, which was the army that fought outside of Eterus, where in the initial stage of the movie, where basically all of Helm Hammerhand's sons get gorged. And so this list, since Helm Hammerhand is completely out of sons, has Hera and Hera the Bride of Death, which is a really fun model. This is a fight six. A fight 6/3 attack female character, which I'm not sure we've ever had before.
Right.
Can't get a horse, although she had a horse in the movie. Can get a shield, and she comes with a unique gimmick in the game, which is her bridal dress, which all other characters, both male, female, elf, dwarf, whatever, are so enthralled with that they forget how to call heroic strikes against her. Which means that nobody else can heroic strike against Hera. And she, of course, has heroic strike, along with heroic defense, and I think one other thing. So in most cases, she can kind of guarantee herself the higher fight value. And even in the case of like the fight 7, 5, 8 models that come against her, in many cases, she can get herself to have the higher fight value. Which is an interesting little trick. Some stories of Hera later. But you can also get, and this is another model that's unique to this list, is Helm Hammerhand Wraith of the Hornberg, which is a 180 point supercharged Helm model that is fight 7, strength 6, which creates all sorts of interesting situations. Like he does not get knocked down if he's charged by cavalry, and still comes with his horn. Comes with I think only one fate, but but still has, 3 might, fight 7, um, and mighty blow on top of that. So every time he hits, he's doing two wounds. But the downside is he cannot take any. He's an independent hero. Well, actually, no, he's a hero of legend, but he can't take anybody in his warband. So he has no warband slots, which, if you want to try and use him, creates horrible problems for the army, and basically means that he's only playable at like 800 points and above with this list. And even then, he kind of like screws up the rest of the army. So although he's kind of like an interesting figure and seems like he's fun to play with, I've never actually been able to work him into a list.
It's a bit like in the movies. He was a bit useless in the movie, really.
Yeah, exactly. He's kind of like a MIDI monster that this army kind of carts around. That's kind of how you have to think about it. And then Heroes of Fortitude, we have Olwen, who's actually a really good model, by the way. Olwen on horses at 100 points is kind of well worth her costs with the stuff that she does. But she's an interesting secondary hero. You can get captains, you can get Leaf again in this list, and then you get Warriors of Rohan, and you get Riders of Rohan. And then for special rules, friendly Rohan infantry models get the dominant 2 special rule, which is really nice in the objective scenarios. Because you can get a lot of guys in this list, and since they all count as, unlike most of the kind of dominant 2 buffs that lists have, where it's like insert, if you're near this guy, you get dominant 2. If you're in this particular circumstance, you get dominant 2. Friendly Rohan infantry get dominant 2 all the time, so you don't even have to think about it. And that leads to a lot of interesting benefits that you can get out of this rule. A desperate defense. Friendly Rohan infantry warrior models must reroll to wound rolls of a natural 1 while making strikes, which is, it's useful, but not a game breaker. And then Frenzy of the King. At the start of the end phase of a turn in which Helm Hammerhand kills an enemy hero or monster, enemy models within 3 inches of Helm must take a courage test in order chosen by Helm's controlling player. If the test has failed, the model must move up to its move value directly away from Helm. So if you have an army that's big enough to take Helm, and you take Helm, and you get him into combat with an enemy hero or monster, and you kill that enemy hero or monster, it's like he casts the old Instill Fear from the last edition, which, is okay. It's a thing. So I have taken this list a few times, never with Helm Hammerhand. I think my loadout I've always played this in like the 700 point range, and my loadout has been Hera Bride of Death, Olwen on a horse, and then Leaf. With guys kind of filling up the war bands and a few cav in with Olwen. And I think in some of the circumstances, maybe the larger ones, I had a captain as well. But it's kind of fun. Hera's a fun model to play with, because she can, when she kind of goes off, she can do a lot of damage, because she also comes with I should have mentioned this when I was talking about her, Fury of the Hammerhand. When she charges, she can reroll fail to wounds. So if you put her in, I have one-shot killed Boromir with her. Like flash killed him. And then after that proceeded to basically stand off Aragorn, and then and wounded him as well. So she can deal significant damage. The real problem with her is, she's on foot, so people tend to kind of run away from her, or just feed an infantry unit into her turn. If you can keep priority and get her to the point where she's not kind of re-rolling wounds, she kind of, if you feed her an infantry unit a turn, she'll take that one down and kind of not live up to her potential. But if she kind of gets into your general, she can do a lot of damage. And between Leaf, who has his bag of tricks that we already talked about, and Olwen, who can do all sorts of funky stuff charging around, it's an interesting list. And in particular, if you've got an objective-based scenario where all of your infantry counts as dominant too, this is a decent list.
Yeah, I
That sounds like a
mean,
very comprehensive argument towards
yeah,
and against the list.
I think so. This is an interesting list, which Dad talked about before, where I think once you get to the points levels where you can take Helm, the list starts falling off dramatically, because especially at those points levels are when you can really just very easily spam fight for models, and then that's going to be the death of this list because um, you can only have one third of your models be riders of Rohan because there is no ability to take 100% riders. Um, and all of your foot guys are fight three. Um, and that causes some serious issues with the list. Um, on the other hand, I think honestly, Hera is amazing, but I think the thing that stands out to me the most is the no holds barred dominant two in the list that I mean really just makes every objective scenario so much more challenging for your opponent and so much easier for you. Like even in something like Reconnoiter, because this isn't a distance-based dominant special rule like in Men of the West, it means you can run your guys off the board and they count as two guys in Reconnoiter, and that's going to get you more points. Um, Hold ground is a nightmare for your opponent because all of your guys are double the models. So if you're playing like 600, 650, and you've got 40 models, if you put them all in the center, then I don't know how you beat that, unless you like really destroy the army. Um, so I think this list could have a lot of merit at lower points and then falls off pretty steeply at higher ones.
Alisher?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I've played against this a couple times, and yeah, I would agree that at the point that you have to take Helm, the list really starts falling off in terms of its like competitive capability. Like Helm is fun. I like it's a fun list still, but you really are kind of strapped where you have like a couple cool heroes, and then you're starting to really struggle with the infantry. The list isn't like remarkably mobile either because of that, because of the like I guess the lack of access to all mounted. So I like the idea of the list. I think Helm, like that version of Helm, is one of the most like interesting models in the game right now. But I don't. I was not remarkably impressed when I played against it. I played against it with Randall's Halls, which admittedly might be a bad match for it. But at the same time, I kind of felt like it just got outclassed as soon as it got into combat.
So, I mean, to be clear, you never have to take Helm, and it's really, I think, pretty hard to come up with an argument where taking Helm is a good idea. Because even at 800 points, just taking another 180 points of kind of dominant two figures is probably the better bet. Um, but the problem is, as Evan explained, is kind of once you get to the high points levels where your Hera's ability to kind of checkmate other heroes ceases to be relevant, either because they can just go someplace else and kill things, or because even if she kills a hero or two, it's not going to matter because the 40 plus fight four guys are going to chop through your 40 plus fight three defense five guys. That's kind of where you end up with a problem. But I think probably still at 800 points, this is still a viable army, at least in certain scenarios where the dominant two is going to matter a lot. So, I mean, for me, this is a high playable army. And or at least, kind of mid to high playable army. It's certainly for me better than the other the army of Eterus, which is why I kind of chose to build and play this one, and still haven't painted up my my Hama and Haleth figures. But this is, I think, definitely the better of the two War of the Rohirrim Rohan armies.
Agree with that. I think I'd put it high playable as well. If we were just talking about it at like high points, then I think it would be in low playable. But I think its abilities at, mid to low points, bump it up a bit.
Yep. I mean, down at 600, 700 points, this is actually, I think, a pretty competitive army, unless until it runs into a hill tribe list at that same point level and gets run over. But
What if you were to be playing this at like 450, 500 points? Obviously, Helm becomes an issue about including, but you could just go Helm, some captains, and a spam of warriors.
You wouldn't take Helm, would you? I assume
No,
you're
you
saying
wouldn't.
Hera, not Helm, because you
Just
wouldn't take
checking.
Helm.
Yeah, down at 400, 500 points. I think,
Yeah, but like at like 450, nothing can stop Helm.
yeah, no, a bunch of things can
It
stop
doesn't
Helm.
matter.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the rest of the army
the issue,
collapses, yeah.
the issue is the rest of the army.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
that makes sense.
that's fine, except for the fact that Eagles and
Trolls.
Hey, don't talk about
and
eagles.
what's the actually Trolls isn't awful. Actually no, never mind, because they've got the sneeze that can have fight value and stuff like
Hmm.
that. Um, but the Dunlendings as well, which are better at lower points, make that challenging. Um, but other than that, I think maybe even at really low points, you don't take Hera and you just spam a bunch of dominant two guys. Um, but I think there's definitely merit to it at lower points.
Yeah, I think
Don't
you
take
do
Helm.
take Hera. I think you actually always take Hera, and the question is kind of like what else you take
I
around
meant I
Hera.
meant at like 350 and lower
Oh,
is
well,
what I
maybe.
was talking
Yeah.
about potentially. Um,
Where it's like we're gonna win with dominant two and
yeah,
nothing else.
'cause
Yeah,
I think at those points, Mounted Olwyn does more for the list than Hera does. Just being able to have a mounted model that can kill things really easily. Um, yeah. So rating, Mick, what you think?
Yeah, I would say playable based on pretty much all of your experiences, because I haven't had any.
all right. So
Sure.
I think Mick, you're up for Minas
Cool. Moving
Tirith.
on to Minas Tirith. Welcome to Gondor.
Did Alisher rate this?
Yeah.
Oh, you did. Okay. You put it in playable?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
cool. Minas Tirith. So, I bet we've all played a lot of Minas Tirith in all the previous editions, with and against it. Now, in this new edition, Gondor has been split into multiple lists. So here we go. The first one. In Minas Tirith, you have choice of Heroes of Valor of Denethor, Boromir, Captain of the White Tower, with his horse shield. He doesn't get the option of taking the banner in this list. Then you have Faramir, Captain of Gondor, with heavy armor. He can have a horse and shield. Then your Heroes of Fortitude are Erolas and a Captain of Minas Tirith. And then your Warriors are Warriors of Minas Tirith with all of their usual options, Knights, Citadel Guard with their longbows and spears, and the Guards of the Fountain Court. Now, if your army includes Denethor, then he must be your general. And then in your special rules, basically Denethor has the Palantir, so he can pick to choose to give priority to someone or take it himself. And then the other special rules are if your army includes both Faramir and Denethor, then whilst Denethor is alive and on the battlefield, Faramir will go crazy and pass all of his courage tests and always charge if he's able to. However, when he charges, that's another rule called Faramir's charge. Whilst he has cavalry keyword, before Faramir charges, make a note of where he begins his activation. Until the end of the turn, friendly Gondor cavalry warrior models within 6 inches of where Faramir begins his activation gain the Fearless special rule, and if they charge, they gain a bonus of +1 to their fight values. So these Knights of Minas Tirith will be fight 5 on charge. So in general, I find this list to be a little bit kind of uninspiring because Boromir doesn't have access to his banner, which is the thing you always want to have when you play Boromir. And in terms of the warriors, your bowmen, for example, are Citadel Guards with longbows, which for 9 points, hitting on 4s, are not amazing. And a lot of your troops are just like the kind of the basic warriors of Minas Tirith, which are fine. They are just kind of the bog standard troops of this game. But again, it's just a block of troops, which isn't necessarily very inspiring. Now, the main selling point of Minas Tirith for the last 20 years have been the Defense 7 Fountain Courts, which we've lost. Now, they are now Defense 6. So even though they have Dominant 2 within 6 inches of your leader, the lack of Defense 7 on them has become a bit of an issue. So what do you guys think?
So, do you want me to start with the counterpoint?
Go first.
I think this list is great.
Yeah.
I think this, and by great I don't mean it's like a dominant list. I think this list is one of the best designed army lists in the game right now.
Oh yeah. As in, it's just kind of in the middle.
Whoever designed this army list was an absolute genius. And I've played both with and against this list a couple times. And just the number of trade-offs and the number of different ways you can structure this list.
Just a quick note. Remember the guy who designed this army list also designed Eagles and Dale and all of the other.
We don't know that.
Okay.
We're sending very mixed messages here.
Okay, Evan, what if he had designed Minas Tirith first, when he was still a genius, and then at some point later, something happened.
The brain tumor or something, and then designed the rest of them.
But yeah, so the trade-offs that go with this list are really fun when you get into it, because you have Boromir, who's Boromir the White Tower, who's a beatstick, but you can't get the banner, right?
You can't have the banner.
But the way the banner is kind of pointed and designed, that's not going to take Boromir off the table. I mean, Boromir at this points level, if you put on, give him a horse and a shield and throw him in this list with all the stuff he does, including settling down Denethor, because Denethor can actually do damage now. Denethor is actually, he's, because he's still got 6 might in the tank, and he's still fight 7.
What points level are you talking about?
Like at 800 points, or even,
fine.
It's like, there's a reason to take Boromir in this list. Faramir with his charge and with his upgrades, there's a reason to take Faramir and a bunch of cavalry in this list. And there's a reason to take Denethor in this list, because he does unlock the Fountain Court Guard, which give you the Dominant 2, which is a really interesting upgrade to have. And even if you take it down to and by the way, and Irolas, who's also great in this list, where you get this block of 12 guys who all, when they surround him, get +1 to wound at fight 4. And by the way, you can't take all of these things, right? Unless you're at 1,000 points. So you have to really pick and choose between, these various options, kind of all of which are good and none of which are must takes, which I think is it's the hallmark of kind of the perfectly designed list.
So from the game design point of view, this list is great. Now, this list is
great. And I mean, even when you go down to the warriors, right? Because they've changed. You're right. They've downgraded some of the warriors, but they've also downgraded the points costs, so that all of the warriors are now basically 10 points each. And all of them have different pluses and minuses. The bodyguard get the dominant two, or I'm sorry, the fountain court get the dominant two, and you can only take them with Denethor. The Citadel Guard get, um, they have the lower defense value, but they get bodyguard and they get +1 to wound if you put them with Irolas. The and the ordinary warriors are, they're the same fight value as everybody else. They don't have the bodyguard that goes with everybody else, but they do have shield wall, which gives them defense 7. And it really matters now when, what you need to do is hold the line because, you get your shield wall at the beginning of the fight phase as opposed to the end. So shield wall is actually a factor. So all of these different troop values have their own little role to play in the game, and there's no obvious choice between them.
Well, there is an obvious choice for bowmen, which is that you should throw away all of your Minas Tirith bowmen and only play
Yeah.
Citadel Guard
Well,
because
yeah,
they're
okay,
better in every way.
that's true. Although you do have limits of when you can take them because you can only take them in war bands of certain
Kind
units.
of.
I mean,
Um,
Boromir, Irolas can take them, so
yeah,
Denethor, Faramir, Irolas.
in other lists, you're right. In other lists, that becomes more important. Um,
Mhm.
but but yeah, there is that particular caveat. Um, but anyway, and and this is also, I think, a competitive list when you throw all of these things together. And because you can kind of reach over here and get this supercharging Cav. You can reach over here and get Boromir, who's like the 6 might fight 7 beat stick. And then you can reach over here and get Denethor, who's a relatively cheap hero. You can just get a whole bunch of guys, some of which are going to be dominant too, and just squat on an objective and just take it. Um, so anyway, I really love this list. I think it's a really well designed list, and I'm glad it's here.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, fun list, high playable. That's my opinion.
yeah, I would say high playable as well. Just because it has options, but like to me they're all quite uninspiring. My other thought is also can't remember which tournament it was, but there was a tournament just quite recently. One of the big, I think it was the City of Kings. I believe it was 800 points, and Jakub was playing Minas Tirith, and I believe he went 2 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws with it. So to me that would confirm as a it's definitely playable, but perhaps it wasn't the most competitive list.
So I think for me, it hits borderline competitive when the points start to get high and you start reaching the point where you can take like all or most of these options that the list gives you, because then you kind of cover a lot of bases. And I think as you get lower, it becomes playable because you can only take like 1 or 2 of these options, and it has weak spots, which is, frankly, is fine with me.
I think it's just that the sort of options that you get in this list are the sort of options that can be overcome by a lot of other lists because of, in a way, how vanilla everything is. But I suppose, yeah, if you play it all well, then yeah, you can do well.
Alisher, where do you come out on
Mhm.
this?
Sorry, but my issue with the list, just to finish up before Alisher gives his rating, is that I think by definition cannot enter competitive because the dominant lists and many of the competitive lists are just brick walls for it. Like unless you take Boromir, who doesn't really offer a ton other than being an expensive beat stick. I mean, what do you even do against the Eagles? Like, you don't have any heroes that can really deal with them. Um, Dale outshoots this, um, and does pretty well in a fight against it. Um, Elves are in a great matchup for it.
Well,
And
that's the thing.
there's there's a lot of lists where it's just it can't really break into the mainstream.
I mean, Boromir can probably kill between 1 and 2 eagles a turn, um, if you if you get him into the right
I mean,
position.
he's
But
only
you got to
fight
have Boromir
six.
to do it.
He's only fight six though, without the banner.
No, he's quite seven.
So,
He's
No,
fight
he's
seven.
fight seven. Yeah.
Yeah, he's
oh
fight
yeah,
seven.
sorry, yeah, so he's fight
Yeah,
seven. Yeah.
the
Um,
issue is it means you need to take Boromir,
Yeah.
which
Or
restricts your other
well, of
options.
course.
or
Yeah,
Boromir
but
and
then you'd
Faramir
always
on a
take Boromir.
horse.
Yeah.
If you put Boromir and Faramir in a horse and get them both into one eagle, they can kill it and then go and kill another eagle, and they can rinse and repeat with this with all the might that they have.
Sure, it's just that you then, yeah, if
Theoretically.
you're talking about 800, then sure, you're still facing like 8 eagles, seven,
Yeah, but
You're
even
right?
so, you've got
you're
enough
getting
bottle
hurled
bodies.
into you're getting
Yeah,
screeched
Yeah,
on.
I mean,
Um,
hurl's a problem, but remember the counter to hurl is. I mean, the screech is a problem, but the counter to the hurl is the heroic combats.
yes,
But you need to
unless
work
they
your
heroic
way.
combat too. Yeah.
Well, no, because you can't hurl on a heroic combat. Um,
yeah.
it's the way to solve your problem is the
Oh
hurl.
yes,
But
okay,
but anyway,
sure.
my point is not that these guys run over eagles. It's just that they have a tactic they can use, and that's kind of one of the things I kind of like about this army is there's stuff in the toolkit to deal with just about everything, but that tool isn't always going to work, which is fine.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the issue like if you're playing as something like Army of the White Hand, then Saruman can stop your Boromir, or Grima will be a major issue too, and then you're not exactly putting too many troops in if you have in Boromir, Faramir, and in your army already.
Yeah, I mean, there's
Especially since your troops are very expensive
yeah,
for like
there's
average
probably
troops.
there's probably a different loadout that you actually want against Saruman, which you may not have
Yeah,
taken.
yeah,
But yeah, all that's fair.
yeah. And then if you're playing as elves, then elves just run over your troops because your troops are fight four, and you have like the same number as them.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, Alisher.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have too much more to say than the rest of you guys. I think it's definitely the higher end of playable just because I agree with Matt. Like it has a certain amount of play. I also have a lot of like optimism for armies that have +1 to wound features because I think that yeah, like given the right circumstance, you can accomplish a lot in a short amount of time. I do think that it has certain matchups that are just a brick wall for it. Like I think obviously Fornost is a brick wall. Like Fornost does just about everything this list does, but a little bit better in many critical areas. But I think Boromir being fight seven base, like really being able to go to toe to toe with most heroes and getting like a built-in +1 to wound, like option, I think that gives him a lot of opportunity to be very impactful. So I think this is I think it's a well designed, well considered list that like nobody's gonna play this list and feel like, oh, like the game is totally lost for them, even if it's not remarkable. Like, because some of the lists that we talk about are fun, but they're fun kind of in a box of you have to kind of know what you're doing or else it's going to go bad quickly. I think this is fun and it gives you a little bit more of wiggle room to make some mistakes and still be okay.
Yep. Who's up next? I think it's
I
Alisher, right?
guess it's me with
Yeah, it's Adam.
Garrison of
Oh,
Ithilien, I think.
right.
Yes.
Um, right. So Garrison of Ithilien. This is what was it called in in the old edition, like Rangers of Ithilien or
Faramir's,
something like that?
yeah, or Faramir's
Armies
Faramir's
Rangers.
Rangers. Yeah.
Rangers.
Yeah.
This is the dumb 100% bow limit list that has now been changed for this new edition. Um, so it's got Faramir. By the way, these guys are all on foot because they were in the movies. It's got Faramir, it's got Madril, it's got Damrod, Captain Frodo with all the stuff, Sam with all the stuff, which is just Elven Cloak. And then Smeagol, who's an independent hero. Um, and for its warrior spread, it's got the ever lovely warrior Minas Tirith, Knight of Minas Tirith, Ranger of Gondor, and the ever not overly lovely Osgiliath veteran. Um, and it needs to have Faramir, who's the general, and then it has a good old domino special rule where you can only take Sam if you have Frodo, and you can only take Smeagol if you have Frodo and Sam, which sure, I guess. Um, and then Frodo, Sam, nor Smeagol can lead warriors. So special rules. Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol, you can deploy them as a single warband if you want, or you can put them as part of Faramir's warband. Um, this also, I think, means that you can't split up Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol.
That is
So
correct.
Frodo and Sam are both heroes of fortitude. You can't make two independent warbands with just the two of them. You need to put them in the same warband if you want to take both of them. Um, Faramir's Rangers. This is the critical special rule. Their bow limit is not 100% anymore. It is now 50%, which is still good, but won't have you pulling your hair out. Hopefully, at least. And then experience trackers. Basically, at the start of each game, you can choose either woodland creature or mountain dwellers, and all your Gondor guys have that special rule. So obviously, if you have a heavily forested board, you pick woodland creature. If you have a bunch of rubble and stuff like that, you do mountain dwellers. Pretty simple. Um, and then finally, which is the interesting special rule, at the end of the game, you score an additional victory point for each of Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol that are still alive or have escaped the battlefield. This can never take your total number of victory points over 20. Um, So this is an interesting list. Um, that that I think balances things in a much better way than the old list did. Which, for those of you who did not experience the old list, it used to be extraordinarily overpowered because you took 100% bow limit and shot everybody to death. And then they nerfed it super heavily by making you take a bunch of garbage models, being Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol. Um, two of which for Sam and Smeagol didn't really do much and one of which Frodo is a bit overcosted, but had the ring. Um, Nowadays, the models are still bad, and Frodo has been made significantly worse via the fact that he now cannot tag team with Faramir to kill a hero. He now has to be on his own fighting a hero for the halved fight value. Um, And Frodo has not been kitted out in a way that allows him to 1v1 basically any hero because he's only one attack in fight three. So that's not going to go well. However, having victory points that just sit there is good. Um, so it gives you an interesting choice. And because of the way they've structured it, so you have to take Frodo first, who is by far the most expensive, and then Sam, and then Smeagol. It's an interesting situation of do you spend the 80 points, geez, 80 points. Do you spend the 80 points on Frodo on this pretty much this model that is almost completely useless except for having two might points and being able to tank heroes sometimes with heroic defense um, in order to get those victory points? Or do you just take Faramir, Madril, Damrod, um, and then take Warriors of Minas Tirith in front, Rangers behind, and just try and get as many bows as you can with that 50% bow limit. Um, and I think it's I honestly don't know what to think about this list because it's just kind of weird.
What do you mean by weird?
Or well, I mean the choice, right? Either you take a bunch of guys, and you completely neglect Frodo and Sam and Smeagol, Or maybe you take Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol and you get some points out of it, but you're also making your army worse. So I really don't know. If I were to take it, I don't know what I'd do with it,
Hmm.
really.
It it probably depends on your point limit because if you're in a situation where the 150 or like 100 points spent on these heroes cannot actually buy you more troops anyway, then you would take them. Like for example, if you already filled up your warbands and then you went, oh, I still have 100 points. Do I just take another hero and take like 5 guys, or do I take Frodo? Then you'd probably take them.
Yeah, so I've only played against this army once. I played against it at fairly high points level. Um, the player took Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol, and it was a very interesting game. Um, and the so I guess my take on it is the list itself is not overpowered. The 50% bow limit solved that problem. I don't think that the Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol thing is also overpowering, but part of me is worried about the strategic dynamic that this creates because this Garrison of Ithilien is the ultimate, in some ways, the ultimate castling army because it can take a banner, so it's going to tie out unless somebody has more banners than it does, it's going to tie up the banner points, and then it gets 3 points on top of that, 3 victory points on top of that if it takes Frodo, Sam, and Smeagol. So in many scenarios, it basically forces your opponent to go after those figures, and you put those guys in the center of the castle. And ideally, because of the terrain rule, you can put your castle like in the middle of the woods or someplace where woods are securing your flanks or rocks are securing your flanks or something like that. And you can be like, here are my 50% bows. They're behind a defense 7 shield wall. And I've got more victory points than you do. Come and get me. And that can be kind of a tough nut to crack, but it's not an impossible nut to crack because there's kind of nothing, there's nothing in this army that's like unbeatable in combat. But this
Also,
army is
spending over 150 points on those three
true.
victory points.
True. Yeah. I mean, basically you're spending, which is why I don't think this is necessarily like a game breaker for this list, because basically you're spending 150 points to get in some scenarios, basically a defensive advantage. And it's up to you to make that defensive advantage be worth 150 points. So if you are a player who likes to play terrain and likes to play defensively and likes to set up your little fortress and force the other guy to fight into your fortress, this is a good list for you. If you're not the type of player who likes to play in that dynamic, this is probably not the right list
Or you're
for you.
British and your boards have no terrain.
Yeah, this is a problem too. I mean, or you're playing whole
There's
ground.
there's
I
there's
mean,
more terrain these days,
yeah,
guys. You haven't played in Britain for a while. Yeah,
yeah.
come back.
I
Play in
have.
Britain. Plenty of terrain.
I played last year. It was still bad.
Yeah, where was that?
I
Yeah,
played on
yeah.
one to yeah, it was we were at the same tournament, Mick. I stayed
Yeah,
at
no, I
your
don't
house.
remember that. Don't remember that.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
And one of
and
one of my
yeah.
games was I think was two boards, two 6x4s that were stuck together, so they formed one board.
um, so
Well,
anyway,
so actually,
that's
actually,
that's
so on
the
that on
that's the
that
issue with the
note,
list.
on the note of spending 150. Now, if you think about it, like you don't like the whole point is that you have more victory points than your opponent, therefore you castle. And so having the 3 victory points is not more of an advantage than just having 1 extra victory point. So most of the time you would probably only need Frodo as that one extra VP that then forces the game. Oh, one sec. There's just cats fighting here. I have 4 cats around here, so I just got
Um,
really scared by them fighting.
but the points you spend to get those victory points steadily decline, as Evan pointed out. And it's like once you spent the 80 points to get the one, it's like well, why don't I spend 45 points to get the 2? Because, that way if, somebody manages to like wound my general, I'm still going to win. But if I'm doing that, why don't I spend an additional 20 points to get the 3? Because that way if he kills my general, then I'm still going to win,
And then at the end of it, you get to a point where you're like, this is a 700 point game, and my effective army is 550 points. Where did this go wrong?
Yeah. But on the other hand, if you're like, here I am on top of my hill or in my woods with my, and I've got 50% bows who have taken his 700-point army down to 550 points by the time it gets to me, then maybe it's worth it. But
Maybe.
that's the trade-off with the army, right? Maybe that won't happen.
Yeah, I mean, if you end up taking 2 banners, you have more banners than your opponent. Then you get these 3 guys. If then you end up with like what 7 victory points to start with at the start of the game, something like that.
Yeah, although I
Yeah.
don't think you actually take 2 banners with this list because that's just more points sunk. And even if
To
somebody
ensure
takes
you can castle.
if you take all 3 of these guys and somebody else takes 2 banners, you're still winning. He still has to come to you.
Yes.
So
That is true. I
So playable,
How
yeah.
do we? Yeah, I don't know what to do with this list other than say it's unplayable and move on.
Yeah.
Because it might be good, it might be bad. I feel like this list combines 2 completely different lists together, one of which is a heavy shooting list that's pretty solid in combat at low points, and one of which is a weird, hurdly, confusing list at higher points. And I guess the sum of that is playable for me.
I
yeah,
think I don't know. I kind of think that this is on the low end of competitive. I just think it has all the right tools. Faramir is actually like a solid hero in this edition. Now, granted, he doesn't have access to his horse, but at the same time, like you have, functionally speaking, because of the fact that they took away like the majority of spear bow combinations in the game, you have one of the best bow option for that reason because they can have spears. You have, well, I don't think it's remarkably competitive at the higher points, but when I'm looking at it at the lower points, you have good shooting, which is like has become kind of better in this edition just for being like the lack of blinding light. You have bows that can sit behind the lines, which is great. Faramir's assault, like you have solid heroes. I think it's on the low end of competitive, and I actually really like the getting to choose if you have a mountain dweller or woodland creature because so many times you have one of those special rules and you show up at a table and it's like arguing with the person that you're with about, well, like, is this one terrain style or is it another terrain style?
yeah, I got you covered both
Average
ways.
dwarf users with Mountain Dweller trying to be able to use their special rule like one time because there's a little bit of rubble.
Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So I think it's at the lower end of competitive.
I mean, the heroes are pretty squishy, and they don't really have access to the things that can really kill stuff, because they don't come with the armor. On the other hand, one of the advantages to this list that we didn't actually talk about is this is one of the few lists left in the game that can get spearmen with bows.
Oh, we just
Yeah.
talked about that.
That's strong, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I mean, I was just writing up a list like at like 500 points, you're looking at like 33 models if you don't take a banner or one of your special heroes, but you can have like 16 bows, and like 600 points, you get like almost 40 and a
Is
banner.
this with the heroes or without the heroes?
No, without taking those
Yeah.
3. Yeah, but like at 600 points, you're looking at like almost 40 models with like 20 bows, 21 bows, banner.
A lot of
It's
bows.
strong, and it's a lot of bows. So then
I think
you're
perhaps. Oh,
castling
sorry. Go
anyway,
for it.
and they're coming to you anyway. So do you even need those extra victory points from the heroes if they're coming to you anyway?
Yeah.
I
I
mean, they may
think I
not.
think
Why are they coming to you anyway? Oh, just because the bows?
Because you have like 21
yeah.
bows.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Not if they're Dale. I mean,
Sure. But if they're tailed, then you're probably coming to them with your castle anyway.
yeah, that's fair.
It's a moving castle. It's
Yep.
yeah.
Mhm. I think losing the horse on Faramir in this edition um, is sort of a it's not a very notable nerf in the grand scheme of things. Like obviously going from 100% to 50% bows is a much bigger one. Um, but it takes away some utility from the list. And you do, of course, have the Knights of Minas Tirith. But Faramir on horse was sort of your semblance of a hitting hero, which you have now lost, which I think takes a dimension away from the army as well.
Hmm.
Well, Faramir at Defense 5 is also a bit of a who's your general is also a bit of a problem.
Have to charge him in, but having him is good.
Yep. All right.
Moving on.
All right, I think I got this one. We are on to Reclamation of Osgiliath. You have Boromir, who can take the banner, horse and shield. He's a hero of legend. For heroes of valor, you can take Faramir, no horse. Heroes of fortitude, you can take Madril or a captain. Warriors, you can take a warrior with their standard layout of options. Knight of Minas Tirith, who can take a banner. Ranger of Gondor, same kind of a spread, banner, warhorn, spear. You can take Osgiliath veterans with their spread. You have to take Boromir, that's a requirement. If Boromir and Faramir are within 3 inches of each other, they can spend their resources interchangeably. Friendly models gain Mountain Dweller special rule once, and then finally for Gondor, once per game at the start of any fight phase, Boromir can use a special rule so long as he is alive on the battlefield. If he does, friendly Gondor warrior models within 6 inches of Boromir gain +1 to wound making strikes until the end of the turn. This is treated as an active ability belonging to Boromir. I have played against this. I would say that this is somewhere between like low competitive, high playable. I don't really see anything materially wrong with the list. I think it's not the Gondor of old that people kind of really liked, but at the same time, I think it's a fundamentally solid list.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I played against it multiple times in this edition too, and I never really necessarily found it very difficult to play against, but like it was just okay at times. But then it does have its bows, it does have its Boromir with the banner, so its warriors can be solid in the fight. So yeah, I don't know. I just again find it a little bit uninspiring, but like it's pretty solid. Um, don't really have much else to say.
So I've also played, I'm not sure I've actually played with this list. I played against it several times. And it's got, I mean, those have been some tough games. This is, I think you're right, Alisher. I put this on low end of competitive. At the lowest, I put it the high end of playable. I think some of this kind of depends on points level for this particular list. Um, because Boromir is like the centerpiece of this list, and when the when you get to low points levels, Boromir soaks up too many points for it to matter, and the army just gets overwhelmed. Um, and then when you get to there's kind of a sweet spot, I think, for this list around like the 700 to 800 points where you can get both Boromir and Faramir and a decent number of models. And then I think kind of once you top out past that, once you've got Boromir in the list and you got Faramir in your list and you got a decent number of models, you've got basically what this list has to offer. And then once you kind of get up at like 900 points, 1,000 points, there are other armies that have like a third trick up their sleeve that they can buy, and this list doesn't have a third trick, and it just ends up with more bodies. And that's when I think that's the other end of like the sine curve there, where the utility of this list decreases. But I think probably at like the 700 to 800 point levels, this is a competitive list, and it's hot, somewhere in the playable range the further you get from that sweet spot.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't. I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing huge to praise about it. There's also nothing really to criticize. I think this is another fundamentally well-made list. It's not as it doesn't have the same like interesting choices to it that that Minas Tirith does. Um, but it is very solid. The banner isn't what it used to be. Losing fight five is pretty important. I mean, the main use of the banner, which is to beat Fight 4 troops, is still there. Um,
mhm.
but not being able to tie with Fight 5 heroes is not great. Not being able to tie with elves, or I guess have a 33% chance of winning against elves. Berserkers now uh, make this list really suffer because they're Fight 5 and you can't tie with them. Um, so I think that this list just feels like a slightly watered down version of the old uh sort of bog standard Boromir, Fountain Court, Rangers of Gondor, Minas Tirith list that you'd take last edition. And I think even though it is watered down, it still feels like a pretty solid list. And I agree with the opinion of high playable, low competitive, somewhere around there.
I think in a way, the fact that it's watered down is not necessarily that big of a deal to it because so many other lists have been watered down in this edition. So a lot of lists will be suffering from something that they are just naturally weaker than they used to be. So in a way, this being a bit weaker, well, it's still fine. Like it's still perfectly fine to play to win with.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is like Evan said, and Alisher said, this is another well-designed list.
Hmm. I'll say that too. It's a well-designed list. So no,
Yeah.
three of us
I
have said
feel like
it.
I feel like we're learning that Mick wants this game to be horribly unbalanced because every time we say a list is well designed, he's like, "Oh, it's so boring. I don't like this list. It's lame."
Horribly unbalanced is only a problem if it's unbalanced against you.
Mhm. This is true.
Yeah.
I mean, eagles are not fun either. So there is a sweet spot there for balance.
Yeah. All right. We ready to move on to Atop the Walls? All
Right.
right.
Well, there's the wall here.
Yeah. Go sit on top of it.
Boy, this is some peak comedy that all of our audio listeners will enjoy.
Yeah. Just remember, Mick. People who live on the edge sometimes fall off. All right. So Atop the Walls. So this is the Gandalf the White defends Minas Tirith list.
Now,
So
this is a really interesting list.
it is a really interesting list. It includes, of course, Gandalf the White, who can get Pippin for 25 points, but only if Gandalf is riding Shadowfax. And of course, Gandalf is always going to be riding Shadowfax for another 25 points. So fully kitted out, and I think you always take Gandalf the White fully kitted out in this list. You end up at 250 points for him. And then you have Heroes of Fortitude. You have Irolas, Captain of the Guard, who can bring his band of doughty 12 Citadel Guard, striking at +1 to wound with him. And then Captains of Minas Tirith for 60 points, who are decent captains. Um, you can also get Peregrine Took, Guard of the Citadel, separately if you want. Never ever do this. And Warriors of Minas Tirith and all their different variations. Knights of Minas Tirith at 50 points, which are pretty decent cav now that they're Fight 4. Um, Citadel Guard, of course, to fluff out Irolas's Warband at 9 points a pop. And you can also get the Gondor Battlecry Trebuchet at 100 points and 10 points if you want to spring for the flaming ammunition. I have never, I have this model. I have not, I've played it in the previous edition. I've not played it in this list, nor have I seen it played in this list because I don't think you can fit it in unless you're like up at like the 1,000 point level.
Yeah.
Because, well, basically, I mean, we'll talk about it a little bit, but so many points go into Gandalf the White, and then that if you can't take Gandalf the White, who needs to be in the list, and the Trebuchet, and I think anything less than like 900 points, and even then it's a stretch. For special rules, friendly models within, well, fight to the last man. Friendly Gondor models within 12 inches of Gandalf the White automatically pass any courage tests they have to take, which is great. Um, Friendly Gondor models within range of an objective marker may reroll to wounds on a natural one when making shooting attacks or making strikes, which you're likely going to forget, but it's there. Um, and then send these foul creatures into the abyss. Friendly Gondor models within 12 inches of Gandalf the White get the Hatred Mordor special rule, which, if you happen to run into Mordor or one of its variations, like Minas Morgul, is extremely useful. Um, so, having played this, having played against it, uh, this is a fun list to play, mostly because Gandalf the White is a really fun model to play. I think he kind of better captures the combat wizard of the movies than the previous edition did. Now that he's fight six, three attacks, and can go in and deal real damage in addition to the spells that he can cast. And he still comes with the same battery of kind of support spells. He can cast Blinding Light for the approach march, although it only goes off 2/3 of the time now. But on the other hand, if you stick Pippin on him on
Isn't Blinding
Shadowfax,
Light a 2-up for
nah,
him?
I think it's a 3-up for him. Let me double check. Uh, 3-up. He has no 2-up spells.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, he's got 4 might if Pippin's with him. So, and he's got like I think something like, how many will does Pippin have? He has 1 will. He's got 7 will plus his staff plus 2 in the tank from Shadowfax to use to resist spells. Um, or to make courage. I don't know. Who knows when he's going to need it to make a courage test. But you can be spending like 2 will on the approach march on your blinding white light to make sure it goes off, and still have plenty of will in the fight once he actually starts to like get in there and start to kill stuff. Um, so he's a real useful guy to have. He's just 250 points, which doesn't leave a lot of points left over for other stuff, especially once you throw in Irolas's Warband of 12 Citadel Guard, which you almost always want to take. So you end up with an army that's kind of centered around Gandalf the White, and you need to get everything you can out of Gandalf the White to make this army win. But he's just such a fun model because he's like the jack of all trades that it's fun to do that. So this is a list that is, I think, kind of unplayable at very low points levels, becomes playable at moderate points levels, becomes high playable at um, basically gets more and more playable kind of the higher you get.
Hmm.
And I think that's true. And I think once you actually get to a high enough level that you can throw in the trebuchet, I've never seen that happen, but once you throw in the trebuchet and are forcing people to like not be within 2 inches of each other, I think that creates an interesting dynamic for this army. I've never actually seen it played at 1,000 points. It'd be kind of interesting to see how it does.
Yeah, it's interesting because it also will be it will still be reliant on Gandalf mostly at 1,000 points. So the question is whether Gandalf can do enough, because obviously the remainder of your hero options are lacking. It's only Irolas and Captains of Minas Tirith after that.
Right.
Um,
It'll be interesting to see what happens when the third book comes out, if the Dol Amroth stuff suddenly appears in this list,
Ooh.
because in book lore, Imrahil and Dol Amroth should be in some variant of this list,
Hmm.
unless they like get their own list, because I think they charged out, but they were part of the garrison, so it'd be
So
interesting
then
to see
you're
how that goes.
spending like 400 points on Gandalf and Immerhill, and
Yeah.
then you're basically required to play 2,000 point games to make
Well,
the
yeah, I mean
table.
that's obviously a 1,000 point game option, but
Yeah.
it does once you get to 1,000 points, getting the two of them
Hmm.
in the same list together is going to make for an interesting game. So
I mean, I think this could be a pretty fun list to play at lower points too, at like 500 or 600, because Gandalf is such a cool character in general. So you can do a lot with him, but like it requires you to be very careful. So yeah,
yeah.
this is unlike the other Minas Tirith lists. I like this, even though I don't think it's very good, but I think it would be cool to play.
Alisher.
I would agree. I mean, this one definitely is not as good as I think either of the last two that we saw, but I think Gandalf the White's fun to play. The problem is like there's just I think there are better ways to get to play Gandalf the White. Like I think he plays better in the Riders of Eomer list, so that makes it a little bit challenging to be super excited about the list. Now, granted, you can't take Pippin in that other variant, but I think it's fun. I like the trebuchets. I think they're like pretty interesting and somewhat creative. I like that they kind of have a utility right now.
Mhm.
So I would say that this is definitely playable, but like to a noticeably lesser extent than the other two Gondor lists that we just reviewed.
Sure.
So one interesting thing about this list is I think in general you're right. The other lists can be stronger, but there are certain matchups where this list is definitely stronger. Like if you're a Witch King on Fellbeast,
Yeah.
I mean, Gandalf the White is your worst nightmare. Because once he starts, yeah, once you get within range of him and he starts channeling uh, sorcerous blasts at you, you've got a real problem. And like for the Minas Morgul list, that's getting, the Minas Morgul is going to have a whole bunch of numbers, but at least this list has like +1 to wound right back at them.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so that's a thing.
No, that's fair.
Alrighty. So I think that brings us to Mick with Return of the King.
Return of the King. Of the ashes, fire shall be woken. Okay, so we got Aragorn as the hero of legend, who must be in your army alongside the King of the Dead. Then we have Heroes of Valor. We have Legolas with his armor and elven cloak, Gimli with elven cloak as an option, and then the King. And then your Heroes of Fortitude are Herald of the Dead, and Warriors are just the Warriors of the Dead with their usual stuff, and the Riders of the Dead. In your special rules, you have Aragorn does not have to pay any points for Anduril, so he automatically has it always. Then friendly Dunharrow models within 3 inches of Aragorn get a +1 bonus to their fight value. And in Visions of Terror, whenever the king charges, after the charge has been completed, he may spend a point of will. And if he does, then enemy models within 3 inches have to take a courage test. If they fail, they will be moved away, their maximum move value, directly away from the king. Now, I always wondered, can they move back if it's their turn to move after? So I'm not sure that's ever been FAQ'd. I think,
Nothing says they can't.
yeah, like I've seen people play both ways that they can and cannot. So I would say probably they can move back, but
If there
argue
is
away.
nothing that says they can't move after, then
Yeah. Then yeah, I would say they can probably move back. Yeah, no, this is a cool list because it has Aragorn and it has Warriors of the Dead and it's generally fun. I've played against it a bit. It's the weird thing about it is that all of the warriors move 8 and Aragorn moves 6, so he always lags behind a little bit. Although he will be going his heroic marches, so even the lagging behind is still at like 9 inches per turn or something like that. So I find this list to be really interesting, potentially quite competitive in the right circumstances. Um, and yeah, it always comes with Aragorn and the king, and then starts adding Legolas at some point as it fills up warriors. So there isn't necessarily a massive variety in what you're doing with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been rating a lot of things as high playable, but I think this is definitely one of those lists that is firmly in the high playable category.
Mhm.
Um, I think it has issues, mainly being very expensive Fight 3 models, um, that make it challenge it at higher levels with better army lists. On the other hand, move 8 is really good. Um,
Or move
but as you
11, really,
mentioned,
technically.
there's yes, move 11. Um, but obviously, the fact that Aragorn moves 2 inches slower is annoying because he is your
Yeah.
March battery, um,
Mm.
which makes it weird. And then, of course, trying to fit Gimli in, which you only do at like 1,000 points, means that you're slowed down even more because he's moved 5.
Mhm.
Um, and they lost the 6-inch banner from Aragorn. They now have a 3-inch +1 fight value, which you can argue about whether that's a buff or a nerf all day. I'm personally on the side that it's a nerf, but um, I think, yeah, I think it's a fine army. Devin took this to a tournament, right, Dad?
Yep,
And he did
he
all
did
right
pretty
with
well.
it.
Yep.
There were some matchups that he struggled in, but if you can outmaneuver your opponent with the dead, then you'll usually beat them because they're solid warriors when you're only fighting a portion of the opponent's army.
Yep.
Yep.
Uh, I don't know. I came late to the party, but I'm assuming we're kind of all putting this in like the playable to high playable range.
I'd say
Yeah.
so.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It's about where I'd put him too.
Cool. Moving on.
All
Defenders of
right.
Pelennor.
Who's up?
Now this list. Now this is something else.
Who is up?
I think it's Evan next.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, all right, this will be fun.
Everything in the kitchen sink.
So, so this has everything. Pick what you want. Move on.
Yeah, I trust our listeners to have reading comprehension because I really don't want to read out all 50 of these profiles. Um, basically, uh, all the guys who were there are there. Um, some notable some notable things. Irolas is also here, um, so that's cool. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli have to be on foot. You can't mount them, which makes sense. Uh, other than that, warriors probably important to mention which warriors there are. Um, Rohan guys have to be mounted. Actually, yes, they do have to be mounted. It's either riders or mounted royal guard. You've got warriors of the dead in there, riders of the dead, warriors of Minas Tirith, knights of Minas Tirith, Citadel guard, no rangers, importantly, um, and then trebuchet, and then also, Rohan warriors need to be led by Rohan heroes. Gondor warriors need to be led by Gondor heroes or Gandalf. And then Dunharrow warriors can only be led by Dunharrow guys, Dunharrow heroes, or Aragorn, Legolas, or Gimli. And then there is one special rule, and that is once per game, each hero can call a heroic combat for free, and that's separate. So each hero has a ability to call a heroic combat for free once per game. Um,
That's basically the
Yeah.
Riders of Thalen rule.
yeah, it is. Just all at once, basically. Because Riders of
Yeah,
Theoden, you have to do it all in one turn. These guys can do it whenever they
yeah,
want.
yeah.
Um,
It's quite a weird one in that this list contains Riders of Thalen with kind of a changed rule and no +1 strength on charge.
indeed. Um, this is, I mean, this is an interesting list. I think the way you can build this list, each way you build it that favors one particular troop is outclassed by a legendary by a list that was more focused on those troops. Like it's outclassed by
Yeah,
Riders of Theoden, it's outclassed by Atop the Walls, surprisingly, um, or it's outclassed by Return of the King. Um, so what you want to do is you want to take a mix of these guys, and that can be challenging to do because your two sets of infantry models are Warriors the Dead, which are very expensive, and then Gondor Warriors. Um, so I think a build I saw floating around was like Legolas with Warriors the Dead, um, Irolas with Citadel Guard Spearmen who can get the +1 to wound, um, and then maybe like Gambling or something with some Riders of Rohan. Um, there's some interesting stuff you can do with it. It's just a really hard one to build.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that kind of the kind of obvious battle line build was like front rank of dead with um, dead with shield, and second rank of um, you know Gondor spears to get fight four, and if you've got Irolas next to some of them, fight four with +1 to wound, and then some cav thrown in there. I almost wonder if there's like an all hero list in here, um, with Gandalf on Shadowfax, and you know Aemir, and you know Gamling, and maybe Legolas. Well, I guess Legolas and Aragorn would have to be on foot, but even
Yeah.
so, Legolas on foot. But um, just because basically I'm getting all the best heroes on the good side, and they all get free heroic combats once a game.
I mean there's Eowyn with Mary.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what if you run like Eowyn, Eomer, Gandalf, and
I think you want Yeah. Did you say Gambling?
no, I said Gandalf.
Yeah, I think you want Gambling too, because that's your mounted banner.
Mm,
Especially since it's possible that when Eowyn and Pippin like start spending, or I'm sorry, Eowyn and Mary start spending might, they can get him back. And can't
Is
Pippin?
is Mary a Rohan hero?
Yeah, that's what I was just checking, whether Mary and Pippin are Rohan heroes in this.
Well, Pippin definitely isn't.
Yeah, you're right.
Mary might.
well, he sure used to be.
Yeah,
His faction is Rohan, so yes.
yes, he is.
Yes, yeah.
Um, anyway, that'd be an
I mean
interesting
it's
all
a
hero list, I think.
it's a point of might back on a 6, so it's not really something you can count on.
Yeah, free not spent. Yep. Yeah, I knew there was some difference, but even so, with 40 points for a 6-inch banner on a hero with heroic defense
Oh yeah, sure.
is
I mean
it's worth the
he's
points.
fight 5. He's fight
Yeah,
5
yeah,
too, so he's fine for
right.
that.
Yep. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I've never seen this on a table, but it strikes me that there's some interesting things you can do with it.
I mean, you could potentially play with Aragorn too because of the free march, so he's not behind too much.
Yep,
Other lack of the horse is a major issue.
yep. Um, all right.
I think the very next list we have to review is like way better in everything than what this list is trying to do.
Uh, yeah, I think probably, well, with a couple of exceptions.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right. So do we want to do one more list, or do we want to call it now and do a part three?
Well. Since we just said that the next list could be way better, well, let's make it as a
Let's do that
cliffhanger.
next list. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, a cliffhanger. If you tune into the next episode, you'll know what we're talking about.
If you just
Or if
turn the
you just
page.
like flip the page. You too could know exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah. All right. So we'll go into that. We'll go into that list the next time. So I think for this take,
Review on the next
we
episode of Unexpected
we
Podcast.
had no dominant armies, right?
No.
I
And
mean, we had barely any competitive armies.
right, and those were
This was
borderline
playable
competitive.
city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we certainly had no unplayable armies either.
No.
All right. So the middle section of the table of contents for good army lists, I think, comes out pretty well from kind of a list design standpoint. I
Yeah,
think these are
it
generally
is
pretty well done.
interesting how Lord of the Rings seems like this Lord of the Rings good seems like we're just getting a bunch of solid lists, and then Hobbit good was like wonky
All over
and
the place. Yeah,
stale,
exactly.
and we
Yeah.
had, a bunch of bad lists that were like on the very low end of playable, and then it is interesting um to see that.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep. True enough. No
Cool.
dominant
Well,
lists yet.
well, I'm gonna try to see where those cats are and if they're coming home or if they're gonna be feral somewhere or stray.
Are they like your cats, or are they somebody else's cats?
Well, it's it's unclear to be honest. I mean, they're technically my mom's cats, but but
Hopefully.
they do live in a village and there's no fences, there's no walls here, so anybody could claim them. But they do,
Anybody?
but they do tend to come back here.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha. All right. Well, this has been fun. It's good to have you back, Mick, and it's nice to
yeah,
kind of see the darkness of the Polish landscape out behind you there. Poland at night.
yeah. I mean, so like there's basically like a single light source just over there. I think that's
Yep.
like the only thing in the village.
A light in the dark.
Yeah, no, that's the Eye of Sauron just there behind me.
Yeah, that's right.
Seemed accurate for Poland.
Yep. But yeah, you can see all the way to Moscow from there. It's the Eye of Sauron.
Ugh,
All
hope
right.
not.
All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you
All
next
right.
time for part three
Yeah.
of good lists. And maybe some evil lists. We'll see if we can get them in there.
If we can get there.
Yeah.
All right.
And who knows? Maybe we'll have a new book to start talking about too the next time. Cross our fingers.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
doubt that, but we'll see.
I mean, next time would have to be in 2026 for that to happen, probably. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. All right,
Cool.
everybody. Take care.
Bye.
Alisher, you want to stop recording?
I've lost track of the button. There we go.